Hey guys, welcome back to the new episode of Mind Your Conversions. And today I have Yusuf with me, who is with Gartner and has been working with them for over 7 years as product manager in personalization and now in GenAI. Hey, welcome Yusuf to Mind Your
Like
Conversions.
quick correction that I've been with Gartner for about 5 years now.
Okay,
But
cool.
yeah, I didn't take the scenic route to product management. I in fact started out as a mechanical engineer, and I worked with metallurgical sciences before I made the switch over. And even then, I was working in strategy and ops, and then eventually to product management. So it was quite a scenic route
Yeah,
to product management. That's right.
interesting. I started my career or I started my education as mechanical engineer as well. And then after like a couple of different stints in mechanical product management entrepreneurship, I ended up here doing SaaS now. So yeah, I can understand that. I can understand the transition. Yusuf, so awesome. I know like 5 years with Gartner on Gen AI and personalization.
Yeah. Again, even there, I took my time, sort of with different building blocks and learning along the way. So when I started with Gartner, I was working on strategy and ops with the service teams, helping our company CSMs, the client success managers that actually speak with the clients, on optimizing their engagement with the clients, right? So,
Okay.
in terms of how to help them with drafting better engagement plans, or how to make sure that they sort of have the right tools and the data available to them and to their managers to make the right choices with their clients. And I think as I was working with that, I was also working with other product teams at that point of time who were building different tools for our clients. And that got me intrigued in trying to be more closer to the client than what I was in that role. And hence I made the move laterally after, quite a few round of interviews. I started with working on Gartner's digital recommendation platform. And this platform is primarily responsible for all sort of pull content that happen with Gartner. So besides
Got it.
search, a lot of that what clients might see on the emails that they may receive or on their homepage or even with the mobile app, a lot of that content is driven by the recommendation team. And then Gartner started working on the Gen AI offering internally for the past 2 years now. And that as a space I was following very closely and I was generally interested in. And I saw an opportunity within this team to work on, along with my responsibilities on the recommendation side.
Mhm.
So I made a proposal to my then manager, who also was leading the Gen AI offering. And so right now I'm working on both of these. It's a very interesting space to be able to bring uh, the learned experience from recommendation and personalization now to the Gen AI offering, which again currently is in the works. So yeah,
Yeah, and like I know you started working in personalization, which was earlier a lot more uh, predictive and machine learning driven, and now you're on Gen AI, which is like in the name it says generative, right? And so how are you bringing both of them together? Because at least in our space where we do personalization, especially talking about web and app, etc., there's a lot of generative and a lot of predictive. But like at Gartner, how are you seeing both of these signs come together and do a better personalization than what has been there in the past?
interesting. So a very good question there, and I think most of the work that I think the team has been able to drive is on the shoulders of the data scientist teams that are primarily leading these, right? So even with the personalization aspect, it is primarily an understanding. I think two things. Mostly, A is understanding the user's intent very well. How many signals we can get on the user's intent in who they are, where they are in their maturity, uh,
Mhm.
what is a specific need that they're coming for right now, what are their mission critical priorities that they might be working on, right? So it's understanding the user's intent and then understanding the content in terms of how the content that Gartner publishes matches well with the user's intent. And there are signals on the content itself, right, in terms of how the users engage in the content, what kind of content is that, all the different actions they can take, right? So that's on the personalization side. I think with the Gen AI piece itself, I would say some of those things still retain. We are not sort of losing sight on that because the primary thing to still understand very importantly is the client intent when they're asking questions, even in the Gen AI based format, natural language. There's obviously now users have gotten habituated to putting in a lot more context in those questions, right? And it's still understanding how do we sort of break that down and understanding what part of this is about the user, what part of this is actually the question that they have in mind, what part of this is understanding in terms of what kind of format or output type they're looking for, right? So it's still understanding that intent better, and then still understanding what kind of content matches the intent the best manner. So even though one is personalization is more again machine learning and it's based upon behavior, and second one is more probabilistic based. I think some of those product foundations, at least the way I'm approaching that, still remain the same in better understanding the user's intent and matching them with the right content. In this case, it's with Gartner content and uh, content that is generated from that Gartner published research.
Yeah. Oh, what if like, and it's very hypothetical. I don't know like how Gartner product works, but I would assume that if you have a solid model on understanding user intent, and you know some information on what kind of data they want to consume, you should be able to use Gen AI to like do bits and pieces of the easy consumable format of the same content with
Exactly.
that, right? Yeah. So
This is which
there's an approach, and there is an opportunity there where, hey, why should I go through? I know, like I've read Gartner articles. At times they could become technical, they could become long. So there's always an opportunity on how do you hook the user with like certain excerpts or certain sectors of it, or certain parts of the content that they want to like showcase, highlight earlier before they dive into the whole research or the whole paper, right?
you're probably giving us product ideas out here in terms of what features we need to. But that's at least some of the intent with the Gen AI offering is to be able to make Gartner content, which sometimes can be lengthy reports. These
Yeah.
reports, again, experts put in a lot of work in there. So these reports could be as long as 15-minute read times, or even like could go longer than that. And it's not always easy and consumable for busy clients like CIOs, CDAOs in today's time to be able to get through a lot of that, right? So the intent with a lot of these Gen AI offering also is to uh, instead of you trying to read through content to understand if this matches your intent well, you can type in your intent that could be in form of a prompt or a query, and you can get answers to your question as opposed to having to read specific documents. Or you could also more upfront just ask if you've already identified the document that you want to engage with, you could summarize that document in different ways and formats. Right? So that definitely exists. But I think you also mentioned in terms of just showing them sneak peeks up front if we
Yeah.
already know what kind of content is helpful for them. And it's probably a product idea that we would take back to the team.
Awesome. Yeah, do let me know if you end up doing that.
Yeah, well,
uh, cool. I think one idea, we like the word of personalization overall, and I know like you might have seen it, is also not just personalizing within your own content, but also with like external content. And one thing like we pioneer right now at Fiber AI is, can we connect ecosystems such that your, and is its intent for Gartner is like, we take intent as your ad communication or an email communication that you've seen in the past, from which you have come to the web or the application, and can I personalize based on that intent, right? Like it's another taking another level from the old personalization module, but that's where I think we at Fiber AI are trying to do, because we think that there's enough intent in ads that people can use to personalize their website and eventually provide a better experience to the customers. But on this note, I want to talk about like, do you see some of these, like I in my world, when I talk about websites, when I talk about apps, and when people are talking about website, they say like agents will come and buy from the website, etc. And this Gartner would also be hearing, right? Like, hey, what if somebody's agent will come and search for a particular product or want to read something else? How do Gartner's website or Gartner's platform interact with the agent and pass that information, right? Like this has been a big debate, right? So how do you see this whole world? Because traditional personalization just goes for a toss here. So how do you see this evolving?
absolutely. I think it's very interesting also because, again, we've also done a lot of client interviews lately. And even from clients' expectations, there are a lot of questions about, hey, now we have access to Gen AI tools, otherwise from enterprises, like ChatGPT version of Gemini, and we have access to Gartner content. Is there a way for me to marry the both, where I can use some of the Gartner content out here, put them into my whatever tools that I use and create custom reports, and then also have agentic AI sort of access Gartner content itself. And I'm sure there's a lot of proprietary information and compliance legal issues there that we won't get into. But these are all sort of valid questions that our client was asking us is uh, how can we sort of have one platform to do all this, right? Because the challenge now is becoming is you have access to so many tools at so many different places, and that itself creates the confusion and where do you go, and that context switching mentally is also costly in itself.
Yeah.
And once you sort of create habits with one sort of tool or one sort of workflow, introducing new things in there takes time and effort, perhaps even cost. And then the conversion cost of that may not be as high always, right? So it's also optimizing existing workflows. These are valid challenges that we are also facing right now, and we're also considering in terms of how do we do that, which is, again, because a lot of Gartner content that is published is proprietary to Gartner. We're trying to see how we can build those workflows internally so that our clients at least are able to get to answers within that ecosystem itself as much as possible.
Yeah.
Gartner's limit, right? Because obviously Gartner is in specific domains and asking so specific things. If you probably ask about what is the next NASA mission, it may not know that because it's not, again, wary of that kind of content. That's not the space we work in, right? So I think it's now probably the next step or next evolution for this would be being very specialized in specific workflows, because uh, the chat GPTs and Geminis are doing a lot of things very well in a lot of general use cases. Now it is, if you have a specific workflow or use case that your base of users come to you for, how can you make that experience a whole lot better for them, where the alternatives sort of don't match, right? So again, for Gartner, it's for their proprietary content, which is in industry-leading reports, trends, benchmarks, the magic quadrants and hype cycles that Gartner is famous for. So I think probably, and again, this is what uh, also needs to be considered in the long term as well, and what we might work on is how do we make the specialized workflows
Yeah.
based on the unique offerings that we have uh, to create that differentiating factor with our offerings. Because I
Got
think
it.
we can
It
do it
makes sense.
that other apps do out there.
No, makes sense. I think overall, my understanding so far, and like being here in the valley as well, is that the way things have been designed in the past would change fundamentally, because it was earlier keyword to websites, or it was earlier people going in like clicking on multiple burger menu and figuring out stuff in apps and like reaching out. I think like a lot of this might become hey, can you figure this out for me, and then that screen opens up, right? Like I do feel the way we have traditionally designed software would change a lot. And I, like, at least listening to you, I can infer that this is where most, like in your case, you guys are figuring out, but most of the companies are also figuring out the same thing as well.
Yeah. I do still think that the one thing that still remains fundamental is having good, solid foundational data itself, right?
Yeah.
That be on the website, whether that be the content that you publish, because otherwise, if it's shit in, it's shit out, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't have good content by itself, and again, if you even if you're doing SEOs and depending on whatever that is, right? And the optimizations now might be different. It might not be keyword
Yeah.
optimization, it might be different kind of optimizations. But that foundational solid data itself, I think, is still fundamentally needed to be able to optimize for all such kind of conversions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I was talking to one of the leading behavioral data analytics a person, or like a tool that their chief of staff. And one thing I was telling him as well, like whatever exists or not exists, you guys will exist for sure, because that's the core thing. Whether there is a chat GPT or like perplexity or even like a normal human, like data before, after, past data, future data, all of that is important. So guys are not going anywhere. So I fundamentally agree that data will be a core to anything that we have been doing. Yusuf, so just to like change gears, and I know, and I want to like come a little bit more on optimization, and we touched upon it a little bit. So you've done like I read through your profile. You've done A/B testing. You've done optimizations. You've tried to optimize campaigns as well, right? And traditionally, this would have taken a lot of your time, right? Like figuring it out, what to optimize, what to test, how frequently to test, when it will. How do you see, like, if you have to redesign everything with respect to AI, what do you think are the elements that will remain core to you? Which we know one is analytics and one is data, but what else? And what do you think AI will automate? Right? Like my fundamental, and I'll give you my fundamental belief after your answer, because that's where the space we are in. But I would love to hear first from you. What do you think you would be able to do on this A/B testing, experimentation, optimization bit that AI can't? And what do you think AI will take on that will eventually open a better solution out there?
Absolutely. So again, just to also just share a light there, I with personalization primarily work with the email team. So we also had the email product team that we were working with on optimizing the personalization there. But coming back to sort of what we would optimize and what would be easily possible, and sort of keeping that to the email context because that's easier to understand, is I think I also read this somewhere, probably in one of Duolingo's blogs, product blogs. By the way, I love their product blogs that they put out. But I think they perhaps mentioned this, or must be on one of the podcasts, in terms of how the copy updates was something that they were able to sort of accelerate with this, which is I think again something that you can do a whole lot more easily right now, right? Because traditionally, obviously, you would try one thing out and then you would test it out for longer, and then that would go through a cycle of reviewing with different teams internally and what that copy updates. I think that review part would still be needed, but now you can have multiple variations and you can try that out much more faster by providing the input data on, okay, with these copy and with this, all of this is what the conversion rates were, optimizing, and with these it was not so good. And having that input data itself would be so much more helpful in optimizing how your positioning also happens, right? Because
Mm.
I think at some point, some sort of staleness, or fatigue gets into the way where you would probably try and mentally either check out from those, or if you something has not worked with you traditionally, there's less likely that you would go back and click something that sounds very similar, right? So having some sort of novelty in that, in terms of the positioning, in terms of the wording of that, I think is something that can be really done very well and optimized with at least advent of AI. Uh, on the other aspect of what is slightly more challenging, that's a good question. I'll have to think more about that in terms of what could be slightly more challenging using GenAI apps in terms of optimizing for A/B tests. Because I actually do think that you can do a whole lot more, because now you can also understand your client split better. You can also understand more of based upon, and you can now perhaps split with different levers. You can be based upon the client persona, or you can do it based upon the engagement levels. Typically, you could sort of do those. You could perhaps not do those faster with this. So I'm actually not really sure what part of that could not be optimal. I think it might just be in terms of when or how much of that.
Yeah.
But I do think most aspects of that, including the action analytics of that, in terms of how long do you run that A/B test,
Yep.
and who do you run it for, and when do you call the test complete. I think a lot of that could be done with existing tools and with the introduction of AI slightly to understand that data slightly better. So I'm not really sure on the second part of that.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I think this is exactly like the way we are also approaching it is very, very similar. And in our ecosystem right now, we are focused on websites. So the idea the idea I live with is that every URL is kind of like a domains kid, and that it has to like learn and become the best of itself in terms of conversion, engagement, etc.
But
And my point is, with AI, or like an AI agent given to the kid who can see its analytics in the past, it can keep on optimizing, be it a copy, image, text, layout, etc. And so we believe, like I strongly believe that eventually the entire website will have, rather than having URL, will kind of like have these agents, each agent be a URL. And so interaction with a human versus interaction with a agent becomes easier, and then they can optimize continuously, right? Like for example, one of the product that we did is we kind of connected every single one of the analytics ecosystems for a company, kind of like a MCP server. And then we said, hey, now From this, we'll figure out what are the conversion levers, what are the audience segments, what works, what doesn't work, which tonality is it, like warmth that works with them, is the empathy that works with them, and then based on that, we start testing multiple copies, right? And
Right.
this kind of scale earlier was not possible, right? Like
Exactly.
very,
Exactly.
very.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, which is what the speed of at which you test things now probably can be accelerated slightly more, because now you have those that ideation process of what it should be, how it should be. You don't have to think about that as much now, because you can just test that out. You can ship it out faster, test that, and that ideation process slightly can be cut down when you leverage some of these tools. So yeah.
No, makes sense. Cool, awesome. Yusuf, so let me ask you certain questions. Will make it a little bit fun as well. If I'll have to give you, if I give you like $1 million today, what is the product that you'll go after? Because you've been in Gen AI and personalization from Gartner, be with Gartner. I'm pretty sure you have like access to research. Like, what one thing that you will build that you're very confident about is something you will certainly go after.
I honestly think in this day and age, there is nothing that you can build with certainty that will last a lifetime. Uh,
Yeah,
I think it just the scope of things are changing so rapidly that you have
yeah,
to constantly keep evolving in terms of what you do when. I think also the timing of that matters.
yeah,
It's finding the right window. I think, especially with a tool, I think like perhaps Perplexity, right? Now ChatGPT, Gemini have sort of search enabled within them, right? I think Perplexity, when it came out, they were probably the only GenAI tool that was offering search as a native capability,
yeah.
whereas most others were doing generative, right? And I think they found that right window, and they've sort of held onto that very well, and they created different workflows and tools that answered different kinds of questions and queries very well. That has helped them regain some sort of position right now, which I think if they would have come now later would have probably been different, right? So I think what you build will perhaps also be as crucial as when you build that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah,
So if you have to pick a sector, pick a industry, pick a idea, what would that be for you?
if I were to pick an industry, I think it would probably be the entertainment industry, honestly, because right now we've obviously seen a lot of uh, evolution in the tech space for this.
Mhm.
But I think eventually the society, in a lot of ways, we converge. Like a lot of the tech optimization and all of that also converges toward being commoditized. Another end of the day, I think entertainment is a commodity that sort of stays well. The form of entertainment might change. So today, obviously, short form content is also entertainment. A lot of entertainment or consumption of entertainment happens through mobile screens, besides the regular bits like cinema, art, etc. Right. So I think in a space where you can have high quality content at a higher rate that sort of fits the needs of different varied populations or demographics. Uh, I think that would be an interesting space to explore. Is how you can cut down on production costs, how you can cut down on time to get things done, and how you can still have the authenticity of uh, that art form itself.
Interesting. Yeah, this is very, very interesting. Cool, cool. And Yusuf, my last question to you would be: I know you've been a product manager for a while, and I know, like, at least I keep on hearing that product as a field isn't even required anymore with AI. What's your take, and what will you tell future product managers about this?
Yeah, and I think my opinions perhaps change in terms of what blogs I'm reading that day. But no, in all honesty, I think the fundamentals still remain the same. I think you still need to very well define who your users are or who you're building for, what you're building, and why that's required. I think if you can get that right, uh, I do still think again, and PMs can be called something else later. It doesn't matter what the terminology is or what it's called. It might be the PM and dev role sort of might coincide and become one, because you have those tools now to sort of build things and prototype things yourself. But I do still think that that is at least for a while here to stay,
Hmm.
because we still need those understandings of what you're building, who you're building. I think that is because now you have the access to so many tools, anybody can build anything with lovable, V0, bold, whatnot. Uh, but having a clear understanding of who do you want to build for and why do you want to build it, I think will be now even more fundamental, even more required perhaps So in some ways, I would say like a job of a product manager now is even more needed than before.
Got it. No, awesome. Hey, Yusuf, thanks a lot for taking out time and talking to us.
Absolutely, pleasure talking to you, Ankur.
Wonderful.